What is going on, everybody? You are listening to Bridging the Gap here on the Jersey First TV network. And as always, I'm AJ Malillo.
And I'm Steven Rombolo.
And this is Bridging the Gap for Jersey First TV. You can get all your Jersey First TV content on jerseyfirst.org. You can also check out our YouTube channel, Jersey First TV, where you can get all of your favorite Bridging the Gap. Elizabeth Nader's Nader Narrative and Fernando's Real Talk with Fernando. You can also check us out on Vimeo. And you can go on jerseyfirst.org where you can get all of your Jersey First related news. You could sign up for our newsletter and take the pledge. But Steven is currently down in Florida enjoying some time off finally. He is done with his first year of law school. Talk to me about it. Talk to me about your week off, your week escapades. I guess only a couple of days at this point, but still, it feels a lot longer, I'm sure, than a couple of days.
I feel so guilty waking up and not having a million things that I have to get done, a million pages to write, like material to be, spat back out at a moment's notice. It's been delightful, I have to say. It's been 2 days and but you and I are like this. We're the kind of guys where I could work to the bone and I just need like a good 24. And like out of that 24 hours, I really only need to enjoy like 70% of it to be 100% recharged and ready to tackle. And I'm good to go for a few months now. Like I just needed 2 days to kind of breathe, decompress, collect my thoughts, send some texts, sit in the sun for an hour today, and like I'm ready to rock. Let's do it. But it's really in all seriousness, I think this is something I'm taking a lot of pride, and I'm learning to take a lot of pride in it because it is a really awesome thing to do and go ahead and accomplish like your first year of law school, as speaking to somebody who's done it already. And so I'm going to move forward these next few weeks, and I have the luxury. I'll be able to come home for a few months and see all my family, all my friends and everything. And as I'm sort of re-engaging with these people that I've been away from for so long, I think it's just going to present an opportunity for me to reflect and see how this experience has changed me, has changed the way that I look at the world. I know the first year is like they're just trying to teach you how to think like a lawyer. And so I'm excited to get back and see what that looks like in the real world because, the whole time I've been down here, I've been surrounded by other kids doing the same thing. So it's all common struggle. We know the same things. We talk about the same things, and it'll be nice to engage with the real world. But I've been spending a lot of time, truthfully, just reflecting on all the great things that this experience has provided me in terms of perspectives, knowledge, people, the way that it makes me look at the world, the way it makes me deal with challenges, and learning all the lessons that come with all those things. And so I think the greatest thing about getting to an important, because this isn't like the finish line, right? Like this is just kind of like lap one of three, but crossing a threshold, I think it affords you an opportunity to reflect on, what you learned in that hard lap that you just ran, and how can we make the next one better? How can we run it more efficiently? How can we shave a few seconds off the time? And, all the analogous comparisons that you can make to real life when you can complete hard things. So that's been the mental labor of the past 48 and likely for the next, few weeks. I will say I did pick up this riveting little book here that this is my summer reading assignment I gave myself to prep for con law. I have the entire Federalist Papers, I think there's like 84 of them. And I actually have a devoted notebook where I've been starting to take notes on all the papers. This way, again, next semester when I roll into my con law class, I have like basically the Constitution just broken down into 84 parts, totally ready to go. So I'm loving it, man. It's a great place to be. I feel excited for the future, and I'm just happy to have a moment to breathe. Really, is what it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you said is absolutely true. Like a good 48 hours of just like doing nothing, I start to go stir crazy. So I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine that you're feeling very much the same way. I did find when I had my first like full on those 2 weeks off after one now last year that reading especially fiction books was a big help for me. And I know you're not a big fiction guy, but maybe the Federalist Papers could sort of do the trick the same way because in an interesting way, they're really just letters,
Yeah.
reading letters and correspondence to people. And so when you read those, it's 85 of those, books of those uh, papers and correspondences going back and forth. So you're going to be, it's really like you're connecting with an Alexander Hamilton and John Jay and James Madison as you're reading them. I read some fiction books and it was like kind of you're connecting with the characters because really for 2 weeks I was just kind of sitting at home, like, what am I doing with my life? And like,
Yes.
people out there might have been like, "Oh, hang out with your friends." And it's like, "Yeah, yes, but my friends were mostly in New Jersey. I was in Delaware and all of my friends were like working and like had lives going on. So it's like during the day when I was just chilling, it's like what can I do?" So reading is definitely a big help and I think that it's a good pickup is the Federalist Papers there, so I think that's a good thing. Now I will say, like, you gotta be careful, and I personally find myself running into this problem often. It's like you don't want to be the kid in con law that's, like, quoting the Federalist Papers and the Constitution all the time 'cause that kid's not much liked, and I've fallen many a time into the trap of being that kid. And you've been in classes where I was that kid, and we all know we
Yes.
don't like that kid, including myself, whomst is that person. So just be
I
careful
think
now that you're going really in depth through it.
100%. However, I think that, and you've said this on this show before, right? You've had a professor who's famously said to you that, all law is just constitutional law.
That's true.
And so if there's any class where I kind of want to be that guy that like really gets it and gets it to a point where like other people know like, oh, he's got it. I feel like that's the class that I want to be the guy in. You know what I mean?
That's fair. That's fair. I did have somebody come up to me and say, "Ah, the con law wizard," the other day
That's the
during
highest
finals.
compliment I think
I
that
was
somebody
like,
could give you.
"I wouldn't go that far." And then she was like, "I just think you always know what you're talking about." And and then again I said, "I wouldn't go that far. I just talk a lot."
There, there you go.
But
It's
anyway,
awesome.
Steve, we do have some stories to get to, so let's jump over and cover our bases a little bit here
I
with
like that.
stories. And I think part is what was going on in the New Jersey legislature over the past couple of days. So this is a story out of the Asbury Park Press. And before I am going to read it from the Asbury Park Press, the author of this piece is Katie Sobko. And I just want to note that Katie Sobko did not leave her opinions to the side in this news piece. And I think as I read directly from it, you'll understand why. I'm just going to read the first paragraph, and you'll be able to tell. The New Jersey legislature gutted the Open Public Records Act on Monday, rolling back decades of progress in providing I'm sorry, in providing access to records on the local, county, and state levels, even as members of the public and the press raised objections and warned of government overreach. She continues, the bill, which, if signed by Governor Murphy, will cut off access to a wide array of public documents and data, was passed by broad majorities in both the Senate and the Assembly. The legislation was sold as a needed reform for after organizations like the League of Municipalities complained that providing access to records paid for by taxpayers, put an undue burden on municipal clerks, who are also paid by taxpayers. And then I'm going to jump down to the bottom of this article where it kind of really goes in depth into um, what this means with the legislature and what it changed in the OPRA. So the updated bill includes a renewed ability to make anonymous requests and the removal of exemptions for call and email logs and digital calendars. It also implements stricter requirements on how to request things like texts, emails, including specific account, time, topics, and titles. There are modifications to the provision limiting access to metadata to allow for access only to the portion that identifies authorship, identity of editor, and time of change. Language restricting data brokers and commercial entities that resell information obtained through OPRA was removed. The parts that remain mostly intact include one of the most controversial, known as the fee shifting provision. The provision previously required public record custodians that had not, according to a judge, properly provided records to pay for the requesters' attorney fees. The bill initially changed that to say winners of the OPRA lawsuit may be entitled to legal fees if the public agency is found to have knowingly violated the law or unreasonably denied access. In its amended form, the bill still eliminates the attorney fee requirement, but does not allow for but does excuse me, but does allow for judges to decide that fees are warranted if the denial was unreasonable. If the agency acted in bad faith or knowingly and willfully violated the law. The amendment also included language that would allow for courts to issue a protective order limiting the number and scope of requests a requester may make if they sought records with the intent to substantially interrupt the performance of government functions. So, basically, this legislation makes it harder for people to get information, makes it makes the information that is provided more limited, and um makes it more difficult uh for the attorney fees um to be denied. Like, for basically, if somebody requests that their attorney fees be paid for, it makes it easier for judges to deny that request. So, all told, it just makes the process of gathering information against, I won't even say against, but in relation to our government in New Jersey, more difficult for the taxpayers. And I think what is quite clear, and Stephen, I'll let you talk more about this, is that at the end of the day, it seems to me, and maybe you can agree or disagree, but that you're basically making like warrant requirements for people to gather information for the government. It's almost as if they're applying the Fourth Amendment warrant protections to the government itself, saying like, oh, the taxpayers, if they want information, they have to give us exactly what they want with the exact information that they're looking for. Almost like they have to prove probable cause to even get this information. And it's ridiculous. The whole job of these people is to keep detailed information. And if any member of the public wants to see it, they should be allowed to walk in and they should be allowed to request that information and get that information. And you know what? Quite honestly, they shouldn't even need a lawyer to request any information that they might need from the government. The government should just have to give it. There should be no secrets here. And I think this is the biggest problem with the whole thing, is that it's seemingly making government job secretive. Guess what? If the government has any information at all that isn't directly sensitive to something like another private citizen's, privacy itself. So like any information about a private citizen that would include like their social security number or something like that. Sure, that should be redacted. You shouldn't be allowed to get that. But literally any information regarding the government's actions and doing and dealings and how they use information should be easily accessible. You shouldn't even need an attorney. All you should need to do is walk to your municipal court and fill out a basic paperwork to get any information that you may or may not want as a taxpayer of the state of New Jersey. And the fact that they're making it more difficult only tells me one thing. It tells me one of possibly two things. These people are nefarious or they are just lazy. And quite frankly, I don't know what's worse. And possibly it's both. Like, they're they are either evil or they are lazy. They either are trying to hide something from you or they are just too damn lazy to do their job the way that they should. And Steven, I'll let you go off because I know you're going to go off even harder than me and maybe you can make my points even more clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we live in this thing, right? As a guy who just picked up this book, we live in a country by the people, for the people. It operates on the consent of the governed, which means that we, the citizens, have to give some of our natural rights over to the government in order for it to function. That's a deal that we all signed. None of us actually really signed it. It was made a long time ago. That's how this government works. What frustrates me is exactly what you just said. Is the minute that the government stops doing the only thing that it exists to do, which is serve the people that created it. And so by making access to government information more difficult for the average person, I agree with you. My chief complaint with all of this is the fact that there even needs to be a provision for fee shifting for attorneys, because you should not need an attorney to walk down to your townhouse, your courthouse, your county building, whatever it might be, and request information. And then on top of it, the things that you mentioned, the way that they limit exactly what it is you can ask for. I even wrote this down prior to recording. Limit the number and scope of requests if they are sought with the intent to disrupt the performance of government function. Excuse me. Who are you to tell me how many times I can ask and for what I can ask? It doesn't matter what my intent with it is. As a taxpayer who's paying your salary to keep and maintain it, your whole job is to keep and maintain and collect these records and have them ready to be disseminated at a moment's notice when any member of the public who chooses to exercise their right to come and find out about this information exercises that very right. And so the notion that this is all predicated on the fact that it is making the jobs of these municipal clerks harder, I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for that. You know what I say? I say, let's get more jobs, maybe hire more clerks, or there's a billion things in this world. How about AI? Have we started using AI to help, make these things more, categorically sound and easier to be found and all these things? It's like they are trying their hardest to make it inaccessible. And what really gets me going is, and this was in the second article, there was just some facts about it that I thought were insane. There was a public meeting where the amendments that were added to the bill were not made available to the public at the meeting where they discussed this bill. How is the public supposed to give their consent to a representative to support and pass legislation if the public doesn't know what's in the bill before you vote on it? That is one of the chief crimes that could be committed in a republic like we have. AJ.
Maybe hear me out. You could hire an attorney and then they can request the proper paperwork that would then show you what you wanted. Like maybe if everybody needs to go through a bunch of hoops to get that information, and then they have to get an attorney, pay for the attorney, and they wouldn't be able to like put the fees for that attorney on somebody else. Maybe if we just make it insanely difficult for people to get this information, they'll stop asking. And maybe that'll help us. Because
And
because I sit in an air conditioned room all day with a computer that has a bunch of files and things, and I just don't. It takes a lot for me to look things up.
that's exactly what it sounds like. And not for nothing, we just kicked off this episode talking about how I just finished my first year of law school. AJ, you just finished your second. You were well on to the final lap. As somebody who is attempting to be an attorney, I don't think that you need an attorney to do this. As a guy who is advocating, do not use my people for this. Attorneys have far more important things and more nuanced and serious things to be worried about than going and getting public records. It's quite literally a public record. It belongs to the public,
Oh
and so
no,
you're going to
that's
make
where you're
them
wrong.
jump through hoops to get it. And what really kills me about this entire bill that we're discussing, it's one thing if it's the federal government. I don't expect anything good from them at all, ever, and so that's fine. State government, I'm even a little bit like, I don't really trust you to do the right thing for me. It's the fact that it's the municipalities. It's your neighbor, who sits on the town council, and maybe you want to see what they're talking about in their meetings or who they're meeting with. Your neighbor, the person that you see, maybe he owns the bakery that you go to that you've been getting your kids' cakes at for the past 20 years. It's those people, and it's community. It's the closest and smallest and most representative branch of government, the closest that people are to actual functioning government. And we are trying to make that inaccessible. So how long until you just have no contact at all with any type of government, and it's just these people who sit in these rooms and have these discussions with these other people, and you don't know what they talk about or who they talk to or for how long they talk or what they talk about, and then they don't show you amendments to bills, and all of a sudden there's laws that you didn't hear about, you didn't agree to, and now the system that we're supposed to be operating on, which works on the consent of the governed, is completely in shambles because the governed weren't even given information to consent to begin with. It's ridiculous. And all of these people that sat in the Senate and House legislation meetings and committees to piece this together, to put together a bill that 81% of people in the state are in opposition to, are now the ones that are going to sit here and tell you, well, it's on Governor Murphy. It's on Governor. It's not. You're the one that wrote it. You're the one that voted for it. You're the one that held meetings and argued for it. It's not on Governor Murphy. You all worked to pass it, to get it put on his desk so you could pass the buck and put it on him, a guy who's got no more elections to run, who doesn't care about public opinion. That's why they did it. So for anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you and perpetrating the same exact charade that these people are trying to play. It's ridiculous. And it gets my blood boiling. It gets my blood. I'm here and I'm here.
Yeah, no, do you know what really gets my blood boiling is this quote from State Senate President Nick Scutari. And I just think it's ridiculous. This is what he says, okay? Quote, "This isn't about us. This is what I heard on my first day as Senate President at the League of Municipalities when I wasn't even sworn in yet. This bill, and he says that in relation to the fact that this bill was made because of the concerns of small town New Jersey mayors, and it was to save money for these places. But it just grinds my gears. I'm going to read that again. This isn't about us. Not about the people voting on the bill. No. This is what I heard on the first day as Senate President at the League of Municipalities when I wasn't even sworn in yet. They've been lobbying for it from day one. They've been trying to get him to do it. And he says, I got no power here. I had no power here. All of these small town mayors are the ones that you should have a problem with. But you're the Senate President of New Jersey. If you didn't want this bill to get passed, guess what? It wouldn't have gotten passed because you didn't have to bring it to the floor, because you could have whipped up the votes to say no to this bill if you really wanted to. But you don't care. You don't care. You care about the money in your pocket. You care about keeping your seat as Senate President. And that's what you care about. You don't care about the people you represent. You don't care about the fact that this is the government of the people, and these are public records. And if the public wants the public's records, the public should be able to access them at any point you want. There should be, you know how you should really be able to access this record? You should be able to go on a website and type in a date and some information, and boom, the records should pop up. It should not be hard. You shouldn't even have to leave your house.
Correct. And
You
and
should
I
walk
want to.
into you should walk into the library. We're from Ocean County. You should be able to walk into the Ocean County Library, and guess what? There should be a section in that library that's public records, and you should be able to walk down, and you should be able to go and get any public record. And if they don't have a public record printed out, you should be able to just walk up to the librarian and be like, hey, I want this record from this date. And the librarian should be like, boop, 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 and then you should be able to print it out. This should not be difficult. And I don't know why it has to be so hard. Other
I
than
can't.
maliciousness and laziness.
I was going to say, I can't even conceive of a possible reason. And another thing that I really want to punctuate as, important in this conversation. Again, if we're talking about the federal government, I understand that when you're talking about the federal government, right? You're talking about the government that is supposed to work on behalf of the 300 and, umpteen million Americans and it deals with so many things, the dissemination of funds, the protection of our borders, which we don't really do anymore, beside the point. And so when people make open public records requests of the federal government, I genuinely believe that the federal government has way more reasons to deny an individual's access to records than a state government per se. And I would say that a state government has less than the federal, but more than, I don't know, a municipality. What is your municipality doing? The community that you live in, the streets that you drive on, where you probably go to work, where your kids go to school, they're not fighting ISIS. They're not going to have some, national security exemption. They're not dealing with the confidential, communications and diplomacy of another nation. They're not going to be able to do that. So what do they have to hide from the people that pay their salaries, pay the teachers, pay for the nice roads, all the things that you engage in your day-to-day life? The answer is nothing.
The
And
answer is
that's what's so
corruption, but
frustrating about. Well, that is the real answer. That is the real answer. But it's frustrating. It is frustrating because when you bring it down to that, the mayors, what is the mayor of your town doing that he needs to have his records sealed from the people who put him in that position? And this is my chief complaint. And I think every single person sitting in an elected office should hear this and hear these words very clearly. You should never forget who put you where you are. Because just as quick as you got there, you can leave. And that's all I would say about that. That's all I would say about that. Because this is how this country works. That's why this country is so great, is because it's we, the people, and we make the rules, and it works for us. At least it's supposed to. I digress. I could go on for
that's fair.
eons about
That's
this.
fair. But see, let's go to some other stories. I think that that's a good place to leave that, and obviously we'll keep an eye out on it. But how about this one?
Maybe we
Uh,
should start filing some public
just
records requests,
as many
and
public records requests as we can. Really
we should
burden
be
municipalities.
yeah, we should be frivolous about it and just see what we can get. What if I put a public records request in to ask for the records of the meetings where they decided to not show us what the amendments were? How about that? You
You
think that one
should.
would get approved?
No, I don't. But I think you should do it anyway. But all right, Steve. So let's talk a little bit about this. There's a big old event in the great town of Wildwood, New Jersey, over
There
this
was.
past weekend. And so there's a little bit of an argument about how many people showed up. Trump and others claim it was around 200,000. Others estimate about 80,000. And some estimate about 40,000. But you know what? Whether it's 20,000, 40,000, 80,000, 100,000, 200,000, whatever the number is, I don't think that that's that important. You know what is more important? It's the fact that you looked out in Wildwood, New Jersey, a state bluer than the ocean it borders, and thousands, tens of thousands of people showed up. Nobody's denying that. Tens of thousands of people showed up for the former president's rally, when I would be shocked if even 1,000 people would have shown up for the current president's rally. So they can try and play this game where it's like Trump inflating this crowd size again. Yeah, classic move. And they could play this move like Donald Trump. He comes down to Wildwood, New Jersey after being in New York City because he's on trial. And guess what? You got the man on trial. You have him. Apparently, he's down to his last licks once again. He's backed up into a corner for the upteenth hundredth time since he started running in 2015. And tens of thousands of people are still showing up to show their support for this man. And that should tell you all you need to know about it. Because, like I said, I'm not sure if the current president can even pull 2,000 people right now. And all of that being said, we are supposed to believe, Stephen, the
Mhm.
Real Clear Politic average, which has Donald Trump only up by 2.7%, when in New Jersey, of all places, he can bring in even the most conservative, the lowest number of estimate of 20,000 people in the state of New Jersey. 20,000 people. That's more people that are showing up to Knicks and Rangers games at Madison Square Garden right now. 20,000 people couldn't even show up to Madison Square Garden because it doesn't hold 20,000 people in it. So he would be selling out the Garden plus some on the street. I don't care how many people it is. It's an insane number either way. And you're trying to tell me him doing that in New Jersey while in the middle of a trial in New York City, this man's only up 2 points in the poll.
So I've been thinking a lot about this since it happened last week, and um, regretfully, I wasn't even in the state because I'll be honest with you, I would have gone just to go, just to go, because regardless if you like it or not, if you like the guy or not, if you believe the numbers or not, it was historic. That was a pure moment in history. When we look back on all of the things surrounding this election that's going to, happen this November, that is a historic moment. Now, I just want to bring this to your attention because you made a point and you kind of jumped on me here, but I think that there's still an opportune moment. Taylor Swift is like the biggest artist in the world, right? The most attendance, I googled this, you could google this yourself, the most attendance at one of her biggest shows, it was 3 shows that she did back to back to back, and it accrued over 288,000 concert goers. It was 96,000 people per night, 3 nights in a row, for Taylor Swift, the biggest artist and her biggest, crowd ever. Donald Trump, if you take and the numbers that I've seen have reliably been between the 80 and 100,000. And I truthfully, when you look at the images, makes sense. He is getting just about Taylor Swift level attendance for a political rally for a guy who, like you said, is on trial, has 90 something, felony charges. He's been indicted umpteenth times. He's been dragged through the mud as much as a human possibly can. And he pulls Taylor Swift numbers on the beach in one of the deepest and most reliably blue states in the Great Union. Anybody who looks at that and sees anything other than a tremendous surge in support for this guy, probably smoking crack or in denial. I don't know.
Hey,
I don't know what to say.
there's no reason to impugn the president's son like that. I think that was a bit uncalled for, and you should apologize to Mr. Hunter Biden. And now that being said, and this is a really brief aside. This is a really, really brief aside, but I think it's important because you notice it. Are you familiar with one Mr. Afro Man?
Yes,
Are you familiar with his classic
I
song
am.
"Because I Got High"?
I am.
Are you familiar that in 2024, the year of our Lord 2024, Afro Man released a new hit single called "Hunter Got High"
He did.
about the president? I think that's hysterical, and that has nothing to do with this story, but I think it's very funny, and I would recommend listening to it. Now, that being said, um, no, I think you're absolutely right. Ooh, Alexa's talking really quick. We're gonna
Yeah, not a problem.
Alexa went off right there, and now she's listening to me again. So she's hearing everything I'm saying right now, Steven. So I'm gonna mute myself, and you're gonna go.
Perfect. Taylor Swift numbers for anything. If you say anybody is doing Taylor Swift numbers, quote unquote, It's like a tremendous compliment that you could give to any artist, anybody, whatever. And when it's the former president, for some reason, we say, no, those aren't Taylor Swift numbers. It was actually only 20,000 people, and you're crazy.
All right, so that's
I
just Billy
just,
Joel at the Garden numbers. Like, fine. Okay, like, okay, all right. Like, come on. He's either selling out MetLife or he's selling out the Garden. Pick your poison.
but neither of them are what the mainstream media and the establishment want. And that's the real issue here. And what I find to be so inspiring about this, and I'll say this, and I say this with my chest, and I say it complete confidence. I don't care if it was Donald Trump or anybody else in a similar position. I am so proud of the people of New Jersey for coming out, standing up, and showing out in tremendous numbers in support of a guy who stands in the face of and completely against a corrupt, long running establishment system of government that is proven to not serve the people well. I am proud of New Jersey for recognizing that, standing up for that, and showing up for that. I take a ton of pride in being a son of the great state of New Jersey that stood up and showed we don't care that there's 90 something federal indictments against this guy. We don't care that you're trying to drain his bank account. We don't care that you don't like the way that he talks. We care because he stands for us. He believes in us. He wants what is best for us. And I am just so proud of the people of New Jersey for coming out and standing up and supporting a guy who they believe does that for them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, and I don't know. There are 14 million people in the state of New Jersey, and you might say, 80,000 is not that many. Like in the grand scheme of things, like there's no way New Jersey is going to go red, type of idea. And I'm not saying New Jersey is going to go red, but if I'm the Democrats and I see 80,000 people show up in the state of New Jersey, I'm a little bit quaking in my boots, no?
Tremendously.
Speaking of Democrats quaking in their boots, how about the fact that uh, President Biden challenged Donald Trump to his two debates, right? And but he is refusing Mr. Robert F. Kennedy's attempt to make that debate stage. Donald Trump said that he would be happy and have no problem with RFK Jr. on the debate stage. But President Biden's campaign stipulated that it should be limited to just him and Donald Trump and not even let Mr. Kennedy on the debate stage. Now, that being said, if CNN and ABC use the normal criteria requiring participants to get on the debate stage, that means Mr. Kennedy would just need to get to 15%, so 15% support in 4 approved national polls to be qualified for the debate stage. Currently, he's at 15% in the threshold on 2 national polls. So he just needs to make 2 more of these national polls, and he will, in fact, be qualified for the debate stage if CNN and ABC News use the criteria that is traditional for these. Now, Stephen, you put your finger up, so I'm sure you have a point here.
I was going to say, bit of a caveat also. They also require the candidates qualify for ballots in enough states to reasonably get the 270 necessary electoral votes. And on that metric, Kennedy's on 6 ballots, which means he can win up to 89 votes. So he's still well on his way. Completely well
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, he
And
definitely is. And he needs to get on more ballots, obviously, but it seems like the Democrats and the Biden camp are doing all they can to get him not on the ballots as well as the Democrats in those states. But if this is going to be an honest and fair way, he will certainly be able to secure ballot access relatively soon.
100%, 100%. And I think there's an important discussion that should be had about this, because what's interesting about the time of these debates is that they're occurring way before debates traditionally do in terms of the election cycle, and they're doing them outside of the purview of the agency, which normally, it's more of a coalition, I should say, is a better way to phrase it, committee, if you will, that puts on these debates, sets these requirements. Joe Biden just said, hey, let's do it, maybe not with them, and maybe our own way, and maybe I'll make the rules about who can be in the debates with me and who can't. And that sounds exactly like something that you would expect to hear from Xi Jinping in China or Vladimir Putin in Russia. But when it's Joe Biden in America, we all just shrug our shoulders and say, oh, he's an old idiot. I guess that's what they do. It's really the continued subversion of the will of the people, the pulling of the wool over our eyes, shielding us from truths that they don't want us to see because they threaten their power. If Bobby Kennedy got on that stage, I firmly believe, and I'll say this 100%, not going to hide my cards as it stands right now, unless something incredibly different happens over the next few months that really shakes this race, Bobby Kennedy has far and away out of the top candidates earned my vote, and I'm pretty stern on that. You put him up there, and Joe Biden loses. Joe Biden is the spoiler. Joe Biden has no chance whatsoever. And so that's obviously why they're structuring these debates to favor Joe Biden. That's why they're trying to schedule them at a time where it's likely impossible, given the efforts of the Democratic Party to make sure that he doesn't get on ballots anyway. Even without their resistance, it would be really hard for Bobby Kennedy to get on those ballots by the new deadlines anyway. And so they're setting this game up against him for him to purposefully lose. The same way that he's the first major presidential candidate in modern history to not have Secret Service protection, whose father and uncle were both killed by the government. And so it's just really stacked against him. And I think that tells you everything that you need to know. It's like the old trick. My dad still does it sometimes when we're at dinner. And it's like a little joke. It's like if he's not going to finish, like the extra few bites of his steak, he'll be like, oh, look it over there. And then he'll, dump it on my plate. And that's all these people are doing is they're trying to distract you. They're trying to say, hey, look over there, look over there. We're going to jam this in. You're not going to know what happened. And it's on your plate and you got to deal with it and you got to eat it. And that's not what the American people deserve when it comes to electing a leader of the free world, nonetheless. And so if the American people want to hear what Bobby Kennedy has to say, Bobby Kennedy has every right, just by virtue of the fact that the people want to hear what he has to say. Screw a polling requirement, screw a 270 electoral votes requirement. He's on the trail. He's working his butt off. He's doing a ton of spots. People really like to hear what he has to say. He's had a fantastic reputation his entire life prior to him running for president. Does that sound like anybody that we might know? Donald Trump. And now all of a sudden, because he threatens the institutions of power, we're supposed to denounce him, we're supposed to shun him, and we shouldn't hear him. And I don't know why the American people continue to let this government tell them to shut up, and they listen. It makes no sense to me. I'm infuriated. And this is again, this all comes down to just the subversion of the will of the people, not allowing those who are governed to consent to the governance that you are subjecting them to. We are turning into the things that we are told we should fear. And that's the scariest thing about this.
Yeah, Stephen, I think everything you said is like right on the money. And I think if you have the juxtaposition of Donald Trump, Robert Kennedy, and Joe Biden in the middle, they are just petrified that you'll see the truth come out. That he just can't, Joe Biden cannot even be on the same debate stage as the other two. He is just not aware enough as to what is going on to even be on that stage. So if you put him in between these two firebrands, these two just rock stars cognitively at this point compared to Joe Biden, like it's just going to look like an absolute mess. It's going to throw the whole thing in shambles. He will not stand a chance. And I think that's why they're so scared of Bobby Kennedy being on that stage, because at least with Donald Trump, they can have the moderators helping them out. But if you have those two men on the other sides of Joe Biden, nobody's going to be there to help him out. And really quickly, and I know we have to wrap up here, I just want to note something. When you have Trump, Biden, Kennedy, and the two other third party candidates or independent candidates, West and Stein, in the race, Donald Trump has a plus 2 point spread, a little bit more than that on the Real Clear Politic average. And then if you look at the battleground states of just Trump and Biden, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, Donald Trump is leading in every single one of those states. This is going to be a much harder battle than the Democrats want to admit, and that's why they're doing everything they can to discredit the Trump and Kennedy campaigns. They are literally trying to throw Donald Trump in jail. They are going to challenge the Kennedy camp every step they can to get his name not on the ballot, and they are going to do all that they possibly can to, I'm going to use this term loosely because I don't want it to be misconstrued, but they are going to do everything in their power to rig the election into their favor. I'm not going to say that they're faking votes or doing anything like that, but what I'm going to say is that they are going to put everything in place so that it is as hard as it possibly can be for Donald Trump or Bobby Kennedy to win.
The only thing that I would say to what you just said, and not even in response to you, to anybody listening, rewind the past 60 seconds, close your eyes, listen to that again, and ask yourself, is this how a free country operates? And I promise you, you will have to confront some very uncomfortable things when you ask yourself that question. And then wake up, realize the moment that we are in, and fight for the freedom that this country stands for, that this country was built on, that millions of Americans before you thought was worth dying for. Because it's not this. It is not what AJ just described. That is not what we are supposed to be. Nothing about it is free. Nothing about it feels fair. The American people are screaming and crying with our hands in the air, begging for somebody to come and save us. And the hardest part of this entire thing is the waking up and realizing that we are responsible for saving ourselves. Because as I said in the beginning, this is a government for the people, by the people. And it's up to us to fix it and make it work for us.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up because we do have to cut it tonight. Well, thank you everybody else for listening. I'm AJ Malillo.
I'm Steven Rombolo.
And for Jersey First and Bridging the Gap, have a good week. We'll talk to you next week, everybody.